Ladies and gentlemen, it's fashionable for political parties to deliver a New Year State of the Nation address. The alarming news is that New Zealand's GDP in the last measured quarter declined by 0.6%. That means our economy is not growing, but shrinking. And the stark fact sits alongside the worst balance of payments figures since 1989. It means we are spending far more than we are earning. In short, the most dangerous outcome of our economy and country in 34 years. We're living beyond our means while we're going backwards. And it's time for contemplation. Never can one remember a time when things are failing everywhere, all at once, and people know things aren't working. So it's time to contemplate how exactly we got into this predicament and what we all need to do about it. And we have reached an inflection point. It's now or never to get it right. What we decide to do together now will determine whether we go on declining or put things right again, with policies of common sense and certainty to take us back to the top of the first world where we once were. Today there's an awful tribalism in New Zealand politics, ignoring realities, replacing them with politically extremist ideologies, where political party comes first and country a poor second. You've just seen a party change its leader, all planned late last year, foisted upon you as being a surprise, because the tanks run out, we're told. No, but a mainstream media accepted it, when clearly it was designed and planned, and some of us said it last year. There have been successful Labour and national governments. Be honest, there have been. Re-elected election after election because those leaders put the people first and not their obsession with political power, and that is something we have got to do again. There was a law and order crisis under the last national government. It's worse today. They were catching and warning. Today, it's a fishing policy, catch and release. You're paying the price for it. When we saw in the 30s, late 30s and the 40s and the 50s, national and Labour then national, actually taking us to the top of the world. We've been there before. We're not dreaming when we demand to go back there again. This election must be about the New Zealand people. Whatever our background, whatever our race, our religion or creed, for if we don't work together, if we continue these numerous divisions, there will be doomed, our people, a repeat of the same failures of the last few years. And that's what our country needs now. A proper analysis of how serious our cause looks. And today, ladies and gentlemen, have a look at the daily headlines, if you can stomach them, and if you can believe them. And whilst doing that, remember that politicians are not your masters, they are your servants. And scanning the headlines today, we are bedeviled by a number of truths, and they are truths. Our country is facing the highest cost of living increases in the last 34 years. Inflation is continuing to climb, and we are facing a recession, and many countries are doing far better than New Zealand. All costs are going skyward. You know it. Food, rates, power, diesel, petrol, rents, mortgages, school fees, insurance, university fees, healthcare, all basic costs going skyward. And what's the response from Wellington? No inquiry into bank charges benefiting foreign banks? Why not? No inquiry into supermarket costs? Why not? No inquiry into energy costs? No action from Wellington? Just more promises and more borrow and spend. And the real crunch is coming for you, the workers, you middle income earners, and the seniors who now have so little, if any, disposable income. We believe that great societies have these features. In particular, they look after their young and their old. That's what great democracies and great societies and great economies do. And we need to go on doing that in our future. You know, in education, our country was once a world leader. Phenomenal, really, when you think about it. Way out in the South Pacific. Long way, 12,000 miles from its markets, leading the world when it comes to education. We now see our literacy and numeracy rates continue to decline in core subjects. We have stopped focusing on reading, writing and arithmetic, and now teach a range of sociological values to the alarm of so many parents. Parents who know that achievement at the start of a child's life, their child's life, in reading and maths is essential for fulfilment in their later life, for academic success, for upward mobility, for economic success, and indeed in being able to participate in their society. And the failure in the past 20 years is not just the lowest decile schools, but it's now also in the highest decile schools. And what does that mean? Well, our system of education has been the victim of numerous virtue-signalling tinkerers who have never been challenged. And they would now rather teach a young child virtuous self-identity theory, whatever that might mean, than basic maths and English. Our education system should be fundamentally focused on education, not using our children in some sort of woke social re-engineering program for vulnerable, underdeveloped minds. And here's the point. And when were they allowed to decide that parents' views don't matter? When did they ever ask you? When did they ever think that you who are paying for all this needed to be consulted and asked as to what you thought? A child not at school is a child not learning. Preschools, primary, intermediate, secondary, tech institutions and universities now all in serious trouble. Why it's important? Because it's our human capital, and how they're trained will determine how good our economy will be into the future. New Zealand's labour market is a mess today. In just a few years, this Labour government has allowed 50,000 more New Zealanders to depend on the job seeker benefit. 50,000 more. This at a time when employers are screaming out for workers. The government then has just linked benefit increases to inflation. A virtual pay rise every year. Now, let me ask you, when was the last time you got a yearly inflation pay rise in your income or your salary? The problem isn't the level of the benefit, it's the length of time spent on it and the lack of incentive to get off it. Yes, we need to give a hand up in people's time of need, but not create a handout that some choose as an easy long-term lifestyle. The fact is the job seeker benefit list is now loaded with school leavers with low levels of education and no work experience. We need to seriously help the young seeking apprenticeships and help the businesses who provide them, thereby providing more work opportunities in training, backed up by sanctions on those who can train and work but choose not to. Whether you trust the daily headlines or not, the picture in so many areas of our society is a bleak one. Take our health system. We were once again a proud world leader, but cracks are now emerging everywhere. Almost 70,000 New Zealanders have been waiting 4 months for treatment, or worse still, to get their first specialist appointment to have their condition examined. And every day the waiting list is expanding with fewer elective surgeries than before the arrival of COVID. People seeking orthopaedic care, for example, hip, knee replacements, shoulder surgery, amount to 1 in 4 patients waiting more than 4 months. Emergency departments are under siege with big gaps in critical staff, and for many patients, the choice is dismal. As one specialist said, the choice is between, quotes, who has the worst cancer and who won't survive until next week without intervention, inner quotes. Plenty of people are dying because they can't get timely treatment, but would survive if they did. And just yesterday we learnt that our immigration bureaucracy, despite spending millions, has only secured 19 visas for overseas nurses. That's about 400 million per nurse. All the while, hundreds of Kiwi nurses, doctors and midwives have been unjustifiably and unconstitutionally mandated out of a job. And before some of those naysayers and liars get out there, I'm vaxxed 3 times. But I believe in the right of people to be told of its possible damage or consequences, and for people to have the right to decide themselves. You know, we can have 50,000 people shoulder to shoulder in a stadium, but we still have desperately needed workers mandated out of their jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, how mindlessly arrogant are these people in Wellington destroying lives, workers' lives, in this way? Under New Zealand First, these mandates, which we believe are unconstitutional, will end. The crisis in health, you won't be seen in the polls, but the crisis in health is our biggest one. You can fix a lot of things up in time, but when people stand to die if they don't get treatment, you cannot fix it up unless you get the treatment right here, right now. It is our biggest crisis. This crisis in health must be addressed in Budget 2023, starting with a name for the health service that 95% of New Zealanders can understand. Not te whatu ora. Everybody knows that language and communication is about understanding, but these people don't care. They got waka kotai heading down the road. They're going to be out in the water. Get on Air New Zealand. They've got the waka in the sky. Why are we putting up with this bull dust? It's your country. Take it back. Yeah. Under New Zealand First, we will change all the woke virtue signalling names of every government department back to English. Back to what they were before the academics from university sociology departments started this madness a few years ago. And it's not an attack on the Māori language. I was here when the first funding for Māori language ever started in my political career, and I'm proud of it. But it's an attack on the elite virtue signalers who have hijacked the language for their own socialist means. This conceited, conniving cultural cabal doesn't represent hard-working ordinary Māori. They only seek to use Māori to further their own agenda. And some Māori secretly driving this agenda are of the people, but they're not for the people. They're of the people, but they're not for the people. Do you see them going on about housing, education, elevators for Māori, or health, or first world wages? Oh no, not that. That's what Māori need, and that's what the whole world needs. We're going to concentrate on performance, not puffery. That's what we should be investing in as a country. Not Auckland Harbour Bridge cycleways, 29 billion on Auckland light rail, and countless other cultural virtue signal madness. We say that the first responsibility of any New Zealand politician is the safety and security of New Zealanders in their homes and in their streets. You know, the last week the Labour Party appointed its 5th Minister of Police in 3 years. 5th in 3 years. She began, the new minister, by saying, quotes, "Government must do better on retail crime and repeat offending." Wow. And she was saying that to a glum-looking former Minister of Police, Mr. Hipkins. But in a moment of honesty, she admitted what we all know. Labour is soft on crime. And it might sound dated, but the present crime stats are undeniable. Total crime is up 33%. Violent offending is up 42%. Sexual offending is up 16%. Theft offences up 49%. Ram raids, most committed by youth, were up last year by 465%.
Shameful.
She calls that retail crime. See how you get away with it? Doesn't sound so bad when you say retail crime. Most of the people are saying, what would that possibly be? And under New Zealand First, if you commit a crime and are part of a gang, it will be law that it is an automatic aggravating factor in your sentencing. In addition, if you assault a first responder, police officer, paramedic, firefighter or corrections officer, in the course of their duty there will be an automatic 6-month minimum mandatory prison sentence. We will no longer allow gangs to run amok on our streets like they are doing and have been allowed to do these past few years. And if you know anything about the Māori world, every time something like that appears, because the propensity of gangs to be Māori appears on the 6 o'clock news, the people are ashamed of it. And we need to do something about it. New Zealand will need more energy to rebuild our economy and our lifestyles. That will require common sense planning and policies proven to have worked alongside necessary new investment. The last thing we will need, though, is politicians waving their hands around, claiming the sky has fallen in, whilst arguing for grandiose plans that will see us all go broke. Question: would you rather the Greens go and spend 16 billion plus of your money on carbon credits in offshore economies? Or would you rather you spend that 16 billion on your children, your schools, your hospitals and infrastructure that we need now? Ladies and gentlemen, that's a brief snapshot of where sadly New Zealand is in 2023. It means we have some real problems to address right here and right now. Problems so fundamental to our future that they can't be ignored beyond this year. And a lolly-scrambled budget that ignores these critical issues will be just disastrous. Having said all that, something more serious has emerged in political and public life that the mass majority of New Zealanders never asked for, don't want and don't need. What happened to one country, one people? Some of us are Maori and Scottish. There's nobody perfect. Gives you a natural suntan and a desire to save money. Or as Billy T. James used to say, but he couldn't say it now, could he? The world is so woke. He said one half of you wants to get drunk and the other half doesn't want to pay for it. We haven't got a sense of humour anymore. You're not allowed that either. What happened to one country, one people? It concerns political engineers who, without any authority, have nevertheless been given licence to use your money, taxpayers' money, to indoctrinate the mass majority towards their perverse thinking. And their way of thinking is an all-out assault on Western values and on the very essence of our democracy. One person, one vote, and each vote being of equal value. There is a full-scale attack being waged on New Zealanders' culture, identity and sense of belonging. And the only way they can achieve this is by attacking the bonds that used to hold our society together and to misrepresent the facts behind our shared history. This elite, self-appointed, self-opinionated, have as their purpose the destruction of our cultural inheritance. They want to totally overhaul our system of government. Today, all they speak about is rights. They never speak about personal responsibility. Never. They're all into minority rights, teaching children gender identity theory, and they're not interested in debate. Anyone who questions them is gaslit or culturally cancelled or just shouted down. It's extreme inverse racism, because what they prospect, and I hope every Māori that's watching this program understands this, it's extreme inverse racism because what they prospect for those of us who have Māori in our background is the belief that we can't be equal without first getting a hand up from them. The only way we could be equal is they've got to help us. How racist is that? The tenets of co-government are based on a massive lie. They're saying that on the 5th of February 1840, when no one in the British Empire, or indeed Britain, was in partnership with the Queen, 2 days later on the 7th of February, Māori were. Right there is the lie. The simple fact is Māori ceded sovereignty to the Crown because for years before 1840, they wanted law and order in their country. No matter how much the cultural Marxists want to try and rewrite history. And in arguing partnership, they mean 50-50. Even though the mass majority who claim to be Māori and who claim to be speaking on behalf of all Māori are not even half Māori themselves. You know, New Zealand is the beneficiary of Western values, democracy and rule of law. It's also the beneficiary, thinking of it, of the enormous cooperation that has happened between Māori and Europeans. Because the funny thing is, Māori were very acquisitive. They love to see new things. We always have been. Take some of them shopping. I'm not looking at anybody here. But look, we're the beneficiary of Western values, democracy and the rule of law. Of course there were things bad, but we're trying to take out the best part of it and readapt it and go forward to a greater society. And the advancement and enhancement of those principles have only occurred in those societies that have united together as one people, and to celebrate their nationhood instead of perpetuating division. Remember, politicians are not meant to be your masters, they are meant to be your servants. Too much of this country is in a right mess. That's because the people who are suffering are not the ones who caused the mess. Our once great society was built on hard work and a fair go for everyone. Our once great society was built on hard work and a fair go for everyone because there were people practically in Parliament and their thinking believed that was important. Countries that do well work as a team, and everyone has a role and a part to play. We will rebuild our country for the many and not the few. That's our vision, that's our commitment, and that is our commission. To protect and save New Zealand. To take our country back. Please join us. Thank you.